Hey everyone, Jay here. Time for Lab 12 in our Intro to Python series. We're still doing loops. This time we're going to get our first look at a for loop. We're going to do some counters, counting up, counting down, and then we're going to accumulate some information through a loop as well. So let's look at this for loop, and our for loop is set up to count up from 1 to 10. Okay, so this is our for loop. Right? Remember, we're always putting our shebang at the top and our file comment at the top to tell the reader, future you, what this file is before they even get into the code, right? And we're always using some good comments that describe what we're doing. So we're counting up from 1 to 10. That's what this first code section is. It's going to print a message to the user, and then we're going to use a for loop, and the syntax is for, in this case, we're doing for I in range. That's a unique to Python function, range 1, comma 11. And the way the range works is it's going to start at the start number, and when it gets to the end number, it's not going to include that number. Okay. That's why it says 1 to 11, but you'll see that it actually prints 1 through 10. For each iteration of this loop, we're going to print the value of I. And so what Python does here is it takes that value I, and it takes the range 1 through 10, 1 through 11, stops at 11, and it plugs each value into I, and then it runs a loop. And the loop will test that it's, well, the loop doesn't even have to test. It's just going to use the range, and the range is going to spit out those values. Then we're going to print a blank line at the end of the loop and go to the next one. Okay, so that's this loop. Pretty straightforward. For loop is new, but we're just counting 1 through 10. Next loop, we're going to go back a little bit, and we're going to use a while loop again, and we're going to count down from 10 to 1. Because I have while countdown is greater than 0. So when it gets to 0, it stops and it's not going to do 0. So countdown starts at 10. I'm going to get into the loop. If it's greater than 0, and 10 is greater than 0, it's going to print countdown. It's going to subtract 1 from countdown and keep going until it stops being greater than 0. When we're done, we'll print a blank line. All right. And those are those two loops. Keep those in mind while we look at the next one. Okay, so we're counting up from 1 to 10. We're counting down from 10 to 1. In the next one, this is an accumulator. We're actually going to do a little bit of something this time. Okay, so welcome to my accumulator. So I have an accumulator variable, starts at 0. I have a counter variable, starts at 0. I have a game over variable, starts at false. Game over is false, which means game is not over. Okay, while not game over, something that I mentioned in a previous lab, something I like to do for my larger while loops, while not game over, and then at some point I set game over to true, and then it's very easy for me to know, hey, this loop is over. Game over equals true, loop is over, right? That's super easy to remember. Okay, so while not game over, I'm going to prompt the user for a number. Please enter a positive integer. Okay, positive integer because I'm putting it into a temp value, and I'm going to check, is that temp value, I'm going to use that is numeric feature again. Now, something that we didn't really talk about last time with is numeric is it doesn't count decimal points and negative values, negative characters as numerics, right? Other languages, when you do is numeric, it will operate differently. It will try to convert it to a number, and if it works, it works. And it will do this without an error. In Python, it would check each character in that string of characters to see if all the characters are numeric. So you're only going to get positive whole numbers. Okay, so there's a limit to that, and we will take care of all that input validation later on in a future module. Okay, so if it's numeric, we're going to take our accumulator and set it equal to the value of the accumulator plus, we're going to convert that temp value to a float. I probably should just convert it to an integer, right? Because I'm only going to get positive integers anyway. Right? So we're going to take the accumulator is going to be equal to its current value plus this new value that we're adding to it. It's going to accumulate larger and larger numbers. Now, it's very important that the accumulator's first definition, when we initially create that variable, it's outside of the while loop. And we'll go much more into what this means later on, but just note that if you create a variable inside a block of code, very often you'll find that it doesn't exist once you leave that block of code. And you'll also find in some languages, if you create a variable in a loop, it will be recreated fresh with that fresh value every iteration, which could be useful. For our case, it's not useful. If the accumulator started at 0 every loop, it would never accumulate anything. So very careful that we have to initially define that accumulator outside the loop before the loop starts. Same thing with the counter. We wouldn't be able to count anything if it was 0 every time. Game over does also need to be, because the first thing the loop is going to check is it not game over? And if game over your variable hasn't even been created yet, it's going to fail immediately. Okay, so we're adding to the accumulator, and then we're just adding 1 to the counter. We've done this before, right? We're just counting plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. We actually did it in the while loop up here. We did -1. We're counting down. -1, -1, -1. This time we're counting and accumulating in the same loop. And so we've asked the user, I'll be the user today. We've asked the user to input a positive integer, which could be any number. I'm just going to input, single digit numbers because I want to do it quickly for an example, but it could be any positive integer, right? Once we've done that, if it's a numeric value, we're going to output, and I've done my output a little bit differently. I've used the Python key word here, F, in front of the string. It's going to be a formatted string. And then I've said accumulated total is accumulator. F, okay, next line. Item count is counter. And I pushed the counter to 5 decimal places, or 5 digits, I should say, not decimal places, 5 digits, because my accumulator is going to be, my accumulator was different, but let's make them both 5 decimal places. How about that? There we go. Accumulator is going to be 5 digits. Encounter is going to be 5 digits. They're going to be the same because I like the right edge of that number to line up with each other. Like if you're going to do addition or something, you want the right edge of those numbers to be lined up with each other. You know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. So if that value that was inputted is numeric, it's going to do this. If it's not numeric, we're going to set game over to true, which means this is the end of the loop. And while I'm still in the loop, I'm going to output the grand total along with the item count one more time. Because the loop is over, I have the choice of doing this in the loop, because I know that this is the time that the loop is over, or I could do this outside of the loop at the end of the loop. I've chosen to do it within the loop because I want to keep all my code within the loop, but that's not always going to be the case in future projects. Okay, just know that because this does happen at the very end of the loop, it is something that I do have a choice about. All right, so we have this. Let's go back and we're going to run this code. Remember, the first part counts up, second part counts down, third part we have to type numbers in, and it's going to add up all those numbers and count how many times we've ran it. Okay, so we run. Let me scroll this up a bit so you can see all of it. All right, count up to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Count down from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No zeros. We didn't do zeros. Next, I have my welcome message. Welcome to the Simple Python Accumulator. Please enter a positive integer, 1. Accumulated total, 1. Item count, 1. Please enter a positive integer, 2. Accumulated total is now 3 because 1 plus 2 is 3. I don't have my alignment quite right on there, and that's my fault. I should have known better. It is because the spacing of this between accumulated total and item count, there's a different character count. I should have spaced it properly. All right. Let's just do this a few more digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now I have 6 of them. My count is 6. I've input 6 numbers. It's easy to remember because I've just done them in order. My accumulated total is 21. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6. I assume it's 21 because computers are really good at math. Right? And then I'm going to just hit a blank. I'm going to hit nothing and hit enter. And it's going to give me the final grand total and item count. This one lines up because my spacing is right. 21 is the grand total, and the total item count is 6. And I have a little goodbye message. So what I can do is fix my spacing here so that this lines up vertically right here. Okay. And I'm going to put total item count there, and I'm going to fix the spacing right here as well. Okay, so grand total and total item count are labeled a little bit better. Accumulated total and running item counts. All right, let's get these lined up. There we go. And we can even line all of them up together. That would be nice. Okay. Let's run this again with my formatting a little bit better. Okay, count up to 10, 1 through 10, count down from 10, 10 down to 1. And I'm going to do my numbers here. Oh! I immediately failed. There we go. Just mashing numbers. And of course my digits don't line up anymore because I put in too many digits. I wanted it to be 5 digits and I started entering big numbers, and now it's more than 5 digits. But you can see that my formatting is a little bit better. And then at the very end, it gives me the final grand total and the item count. I guess strictly speaking, I don't even need to put that grand total because the grand total is really the exact same thing as the previous accumulated total. So I could skip that part and save some programming. Or I could actually take this message here and put it at the end of the else. This is what I'm going to do. Okay, see how this is a little bit different. What happens is if my temp value is numeric, I'm going to add that value to the accumulator, the input value from the user, and I'm going to increment the counter. If it's not a number that is put in, game over equals true. In either case, what I will do is output the cool message. I gave you the accumulated total and the running item count. In either case, even at the last time when game over is true, I'm still going to do this one more time within the loop every time. And then if game over is true, it will come up here. It won't act one more time. It will just come down and say goodbye. So now I've saved myself some programming because I don't have to have this message twice. I just need to make sure that it's readable both times. It says accumulated total. It says running item count. And when it gets to the last message, that will be accurate so that I know I don't have to code this thing twice like I initially did. Okay, so always keep thinking. Additionally, I'm going to change this to an 8-digit number so I can type in larger numbers. Save. I'm going to run it one more time so you can see the difference. Okay, have my count up, count down, and my accumulator here at the end. You see that it's really just, oh, and I typed something that wasn't a number. I accidentally pushed the divide symbol there while I was just typing away. But you'll see that the last time, even though I entered an invalid number, which that's the last thing that you're always going to enter is something that's invalid, either a blank or a letter or whatever. And then it's going to print that one last time anyway, because we've had it print at the end of the loop every time. Okay, so these are some options with loops that you can do where you're going to print that. Okay, you don't always have to print it in the middle or at the end. The choice is yours depending on what your needs are. All right, so let's have another look at the code, last code look, so that you can copy it for your lab assignment. Go ahead and pause. I'll move to the next one. All right, and that's the other end of the code. Go ahead and pause that and copy it. All right, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.